All right, guys, we are talking about Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry today. I had no intention of making this video today because I just finished this book about 10-15 minutes ago and did a, TikTok on it, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna simmer on this for the weekend and then make a YouTube video. But then I was like, you know what? Why not make one now while the feelings are fresh? Why not? Why not? As you may have guessed by my early reaction to this book, I loved it. It was some like nothing I had ever read before. This is a Western epic that takes place between a fictional town called Lonesome Dove, which is kind of on the border of Texas and Mexico, and Montana. It's about a group of cowboys, outlaws, cattle ranchers, drunks, gamblers, that are basically traveling from their town of Lonesome Dove to Montana with like 3,000 cows. So it's right off the bat, kind of just like an interesting plot. You know what I mean? Like, okay, so this is kind of like an adventure story. What are they going to run into along the way? And that is kind of more or less what this is about. But really at the heart of this book is the characters, and I just completely fell in love with all of these people. Even the ones that I found kind of, there were a few characters that I maybe found kind of like a little irritating, not irritating, but just kind of a little like towards the beginning of the book. I just completely fell in love with them by the end of it. I was like, I get you now, I understand, because with Larry McMurtry's writing, like just bear in mind, I think I'm at like 65 books in my life now. So nothing crazy. I know there's a lot of people on here that have read thousands and thousands, would have a much more much deeper insight into things like this. But from what I've read so far, this book really does seem like a masterclass in dialogue. The dialogue in this book is just so addicting and so real. I couldn't get enough of it. And through the dialogue and through McMurtry's writing, you just get such an intense look into every single one of these people, and you really just start to understand them. Even if they're making decisions that you kind of find questionable, you're like, yeah, but I get it. You know what I mean? Like you got to remember, you're just like, you're trying to reason with them. Like as you're reading it, you're like, no, I get it. I understand. Or you're like, what are you doing? But it's, because you're trying to like battle their own personality, and it's just truly like, I can't imagine ever forgetting about these characters. I think I'm going to be sitting on them or sitting with them for quite a while. I don't know what I'm trying to say there, but just absolutely loved them. There's one character in particular, those who have read Lonesome Dove are going to know who I'm going to say. That is just so good, just so great, such a lovable character. Probably, well, not probably, easily top 5 characters I've read in my life to date, and that is Augustus McCrae. He is the heart of this book. I think he is just such a he's so I can't even really describe him. He's funny unintentionally. He has a heart. He kind of gets in his own way, and he doesn't understand anybody else's problems with life. You know what I mean? It's just like, what, this is what it is, and there's just something about Gus that I truly loved. Although I as I mentioned, I loved most of the characters in this book. Now, I wanted to give you like a little dialogue example, and I remember as I was writing this, I don't annotate as I'm reading, but I did read this one quote this is from a female character in the book, and it's kind of a quote about love, and I was gonna just read it. It's really quick, if I can find it here. Okay, so many men had looked at her that way, and she was not flattered by it. They wanted to pretend, such men, that they were different, that she was different, and that what might happen between them would be different than it ever would be. They wanted to pretend that they wanted pretty dresses and smiles, when what they really wanted was for her to lay down under them. That was the real wish beneath all the pretty wishes men had. And when she was under them, they could look down and pretend something pretty was happening, but she would look up and only see a dumb face above her, strained, dishonest, and anything but pretty. So that is just like, I don't know why that one jumped out to me. It was just it's such a depressingly real look at love. This poor female character in this book has been through a lot, and you can kind of just see through that little quote of and how she feels about relationships in general, that it's just she's kind of very broken. And I just thought that quote was just very like, oh man, that is awful. But that's how the whole book reads. Every single page there's something on there where you're like, whew, that was clever, or that's deep, or wow, I feel things that are different. So the other thing I wanted to mention about this book is just how unexpectedly ruthless it is. There are a lot of points in this book that kind of came out of nowhere to me. Especially there's one in particular part, kind of in the middle of this book, right around halfway through, where something happens. This is going to be as spoiler free a review as possible, but something happens and it really caught me by surprise. I was like, what happened? Like, whoa, that's detailed and very gruesome, and it's just very heartbreaking too. And you're just like, oh my god, like how does this there's this other character, like how do they continue? And they do, and it's just kind of a similar kind of theme throughout the book is how calm and mellow everybody is in response to some pretty gruesome things. People are afraid of death, and they're afraid of being in pain and stuff like that, but they also kind of treat death as someone caught a cold. You know what I mean? You'll see throughout the book the conversations between certain characters where they're like, oh yeah, he's dead. And it'll be a character that you had been reading about for 600 pages, 400 pages, whatever, and you're kind of expecting this big emotional reaction from the characters in there because you're feeling it. You're like, oh my god, seriously? But the characters in the book by and large are just like, huh, well, that's too bad. And they kind of just move on. And it's a very jarring sort of writing style, and I really loved it. I thought it was super refreshing, and I couldn't put it down. I did want to say that Larry McMurtry, to kind of go off of the whole gruesomeness, minimal feelings, minimal emotions sort of thing, writing style that this book kind of plays through, is that Larry McMurtry evidently wanted to write a book that kind of stripped away the epic Western cliches where it's riding off into the sunset and everything kind of works out and is all good. From what I'm told anyways, he wanted to write a book that kind of took that away and made you kind of immersed you in a world where you're kind of realizing how awful this lifestyle would have been. And he nailed it, I would say, because there's no way there's no way I could live through any of this. I would be dead in a day and a half. It was just refreshing in that sense too, because you're kind of throughout the book, I'm trying not to be spoilery, but throughout the book you're kind of just waiting for something good to happen. You know what I mean? Throughout the whole book you're kind of like, oh, like maybe this will happen, or ooh, them, or blah blah blah, and you're kind of just always just stabbed in the gut a little bit, and you're like, my goodness gracious, it's man, again, I just finished reading this book, probably about 20-30 minutes ago now. So this is a very kind of fresh review. I haven't really put my thoughts together properly, but I wanted to jump on here and just kind of give my reaction to it as freshly as possible. So as I believe I mentioned, I can't remember if I mentioned this already in this video, but there is a sequel to this book called Streets of Laredo, and there are also 2 prequels that Larry McMurtry wrote. So this is the first one. I was getting confused because I kept on saying, oh, I'm reading Lonesome Dove, and there were a lot of people, not a lot of people, but a few people messaging me and were like, oh, did you read the first ones, or are you starting with this one? And I was like, wait, what? Like, I thought this was the first. I got so confused, but it's kind of like a Star Wars thing. So, Star Wars, I think, started with like number 6 or so. I don't actually really know Star Wars that well, but started with a later one. So this was the first book that came out, Lonesome Dove, and then there was a sequel, Streets of Laredo, and then he wrote 2 prequels. Killer Moon and Killer something and Comanche Moon. So I'm going to be reading all of those because I could not get enough of this. I'm actually really excited to reread this. I'm feeling kind of sad. Like, I'm feeling kind of bummed out because I know I'm not going to be able to cuddle up in bed tonight and just kind of get into this world. You know what I mean? It's over. I'm very excited to start The Stand by Stephen King. That's going to be my next book, but bummed out that this one's over because this is definitely one of those books that leaves a hole in your heart after you're finished. And however, as I just mentioned, 3 other books to read, so that's really, really exciting. I am gonna have to order those ones, I think, because I look for them at the bookstore. The bookstores around us, at least, only ever have Lonesome Dove. I've never seen any of the other ones, so those are probably gonna have to be an online buy, which kind of a bummer. I don't know if you're like me. I kind of like finding books in stores. I will order them online if I have to, but I'll go months looking for a book in store just to like just for that like fun feeling of like, oh, it's here. It's such a great feeling. That I kind of just am cool to wait and see if I can find them. However, with this one, I might just have to order them because I'm thinking I'm going to have to get into the sequel relatively soon. I'm really hoping the sequel follows the same, at least a few of the same characters, because I would love to see, I'd love to see where Call goes and what's going on with Lorena and, Newt. Friggin' Call and Newt, you know what I mean? Like, just friggin', you know what I mean? Ugh. Frig. Anywho, this was a great book. If you're looking for something different, if you've never read a Western, I had never read a Western, unless you kind of count The Dark Tower. Some people count The Dark Tower, especially like that first book, as a Western. Maybe this is my second Western, but The Dark Tower is so weird that that's I don't know. Anyway, I would highly recommend this one, guys. It'll be your favorite book. I personally guarantee you this will be in your top 10 of all time. And if it isn't, I'm sorry. But also, if you have read this book, I'd love for you to reach out. I'd love to chat with some people about this book who we can be like spoilery about it and kind of just like say what we need to say. That would be really, really fun. So feel free to do that. Lonesome Dove, absolutely killer. That'll be it for now. Thank you. How to do this? Bye.